Joining us now is Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. His wife, former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, is the survivor of a politically motivated shooting in 2011. They have both been advocating for reforms tirelessly since then. Senator Kelly, thank you for being here with me today. I thought of you and I thought of your wife all day today, and just how tough days like this must really be. So first, I just want to start by asking you, when you saw the news of the shooting, what was your first reaction?
Well, it's horrifying. You know, we've seen this many times in our country's history. It feels like more lately. You know, I immediately thought of, Charlie's wife. I didn't know her name when this happened, but his wife, Erica, and the phone call that she got, which is similar to the phone call that I received 14 years ago. And it is just a horrific thing to hear somebody say. Case of Gabby, she survived. Charlie did not. And this type of political violence in our country is just too common, and it has to end. But I think about his parents and his children, 3 and 1 year old that are going to grow up now without a dad.
Yeah.
And it is just a horrible, horrible thing.
It feels like we have these conversations too often, and I know you're often a part of them. And I should note, in addition to the horrific shooting today, there was the kidnapping plot against Governor Whitmer, the attack on Paul Pelosi, multiple assassination attempts against Trump, the attack on the Capitol, the baseball shooting, of course, the shootings in Minnesota. What can national lawmakers do? What can be done at this point to change this trajectory?
Well, I think everybody in my position, or governors, members of the House, U.S. senators. We need to think about, how much weight our words carry, and, make a decision. Is this the trajectory we want the country to stay on, or do we want to get off of it? And I think it's within our power to, get off of this and, dial it down and, get our country to a better place. Politically, it's been tough the last 8 years, and it has been very divisive. I think it's important for people to recognize that whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you generally want the same thing, for our country. We want our kids to get a good education. We want people to be able to, raise a family and put food on the table and make a decent living and have decent health care. And then we all often get, all mixed up in how are we going to get there? And I think what folks see from the outside is they see a very divided Washington. And we're often divided. But we also have moments where we, come together to, make, hard choices, but, choices that are good for the American people. And I think people don't see that. I worry about, you have, folks across the political spectrum that just say things that don't age well, and often they probably should regret saying it. And people listen. They listen to what we say. They see it on social media. So I think it's on all of us to really consider, how we get our message out there and how this message does have an impact.
It's so challenging for a million reasons right now. And I would just want to say first, we don't know who the shooter is. We don't know what their motivation is, because they're still at large. It's a very scary time for the people in that community right now. And President Trump, this was somebody he knew personally, I will acknowledge, and obviously is impacted by it. But he put out a 4-minute video, and I'm not going to play the video. I don't want to play the video. But there was a line at the end that I think I just wanted to raise and read. At the end of this 4-minute video, he says, "For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now." And obviously, there's a lot of rhetoric that is problematic. A lot of it is coming from one particular side and from one particular building. But what can be done? I fear when this is an escalation already in less than 24 hours of this shooting.
Yeah, I think historically presidents have looked for opportunities to bring people together. Right now we need a president that'll bring the country together and not try to further, divide us. People say things, regretful things. I've seen it. I've seen, Democrats in the Senate say things where I thought were over a line. I've seen Republicans do the same thing. perpetuating this kind of thing is just not helpful. I hope in the coming days the president looks at this as an opportunity to unite us rather than to divide us.
Yeah, I will say I worked for presidents when there were shootings, unfortunately, on both sides of the aisle, and that is what they do. You try to unite the country and come together and be there for people. Your wife's statement today was incredibly powerful, and part of what she said was that both parties share a moral and patriotic duty to take meaningful action to stop gun crime from claiming more lives. This has been something you have both worked on so passionately. What do you hope, and I don't even necessarily mean something policy-wise, but what do you hope comes out of this moment?
Well, we've got to see the shooter's motivation. We've got to see where they got the firearm. But one thing we do know is we've got very easy access to firearms, and we have a lot of people that get shot. I think that's indisputable. And we do also know where there's stronger gun laws, there's less gun violence. Again, we do not know, who this person was, where they got the gun from. But we often see in these types of shootings, what happened to Gabby was a guy who was dangerously mentally ill, disturbed. He had easy access to a firearm. He passed a background check, but, under maybe different circumstances with, more information out there, he wouldn't have. But we do see, time and time again, things like this happen because somebody who shouldn't have a firearm gets one. Again, in this case, we still have to see the details. But I would say, in general, it's up to us, Democrats and Republicans working together to see if we can find solutions, find some common ground on this issue, because having over 100,000 people shot and killed every year in our country is just, it's unacceptable.
One of the things I've thought a lot about as it relates to Gabby, of course, and the shooting today is that these are people who are playing a role in public life. You don't have to agree with them on everything, but they're trying to engage with the public, have a conversation, and people do that. There are town halls happening across the country all the time. There are many people who will run for president who will be out there doing events. How does this change, or should it change? I mean, nobody wants to live in a bubble. We don't want our politicians to live in a bubble because that's part of our democracy. So should anything change right now, or how should we address that, keep people safe while still maintaining that ability to dialogue?
As Gabby was meeting with her constituents at a Safeway, doing something sort of similar, answering questions, Charlie Kirk at a university. Now, I didn't agree with much of what Charlie Kirk would say, but I would go to war. I served in the Navy for 25 years. I would go to war to defend his right to say it. He had every right to be there. How does this change things? I think in the near term, people will start, wondering if they should participate in public life because they might be concerned for their safety, their family's safety. Folks might decide, hey, I don't want to go to a political rally. Many of those folks there today, maybe that will be the last political thing they do for a really long time. That's not healthy for our democracy. We need people engaged. We need them to show up. Even, I'm a Democrat serving in the Senate, even if they're showing up to vote for Republicans, we need people to participate. And when something like this happens, it makes people question the strength of our democracy and whether or not they should be involved in it.
I wanted to mention with you, because it just hasn't been mentioned today much, is that we also got the news of a school shooting in Colorado where at least 3 students were injured. This happened on a university campus, and it just makes me think a lot about young people and students who are just trying to go to school or just trying to attend events. Very different scenarios, but they're all students and young people. What kind of security or what kind of changes, or maybe there shouldn't be, should happen as it relates to school administrators and thinking about the safety of these events?
Well, I think somebody who runs a school, whether it's an elementary school or a university, need to think about these things. I have a 4-year-old granddaughter.
Yeah.
Before she was 2, she was in her first school lockdown.
Yeah.
It wasn't a drill, for real. She won't remember. But our young people have been going through this and living through this their entire lives. It's incredibly stressful. I think in some cases for the kids in Denver, today that, results in like stress and PTSD. Yeah. We shouldn't accept that we will have a society where School shootings on a daily or weekly basis is an acceptable thing. It is not. And here's the thing. We can do something about it. And we do know what to do. Just got to take some, it's going to take some political courage for some people to stand up against, interests that have a lot of money and political power, but stand up against those interests to just do the right thing.
Senator Mark Kelly, I was really looking forward to talking to you today. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jen.